Do you guys want to answer a listener question? One old
Yeah.
one that we have for a while. Okay. You guys
Hmm.
From
ready?
all day Mark.
All right. All day Mark sent us a bunch of questions a long time ago, and we've gotten to two of them on our lost episodes, which you guys will be able to listen sometime later in the week. Um, but we're gonna ask another one. So this one, um, do religious colleges that are not supposed to be affiliated with a specific church contribute to the institutionalization of the non-institutional Church of Christ? Like, do they do some of these churches and organizations kind of become where these churches are more like a denomination? I think is the point, right? So he had another question about that, but I guess we can kind of discuss them both. Um, does a university that is not affiliated with the church, but basically comes out and
Yeah, we can get
says
into that.
all the other stuff, then does that sort of make the Church of Christ a denomination by affiliating yourself with that institution? JBM.
Bonus question: what's wrong with denominations?
Well,
Um,
That
I
should be
guess
a
I can
question
get
for
into
next
that
week, right?
part. Yeah,
Because it
I mean
really is like
part
totally
two.
a
I
different
guess
question.
part
But
two of the question. Let's see. What he did ask that question.
okay, let's just go
Is
for it. Let's just go for it then.
it is the
Let's
Church
start
of
with the
Christ
first
a
one.
denomination,
Let's
and
start with the
does that
first.
push it?
Start with the first question,
All
then we'll
right,
move to it.
go, JBM.
say the first question again. Now you've got me confused.
Well, like so,
Just read it.
Basically,
the
does Florida
question he
College
asked was,
contribute to the
yeah,
institutionalization of the Church of Christ that's supposed to be non-denominational?
and does that make it a denomination, or are we more of a denomination now than we ever have been because of religious institutions like that?
Right.
Um, are we more of a denomination now than we ever have been? Yes. Is it because of that? I don't really think so. I mean, I don't know. Like the church, I don't know. There's a very muddled history about the origins of Florida College, and how exactly the funding came to be. But I don't know. I mean, the church is kind of the reason that Florida College exists. So I guess it's in a. I guess you could go in circles with it. But I don't think Florida College is like bad for the church. I don't think that religious schooling is bad for religion by any means. So uh, that's my two
So
cents.
my answer to this question will be based on I don't do we have we talked about we might have talked about this on previous podcasts. Remind me if we have. But so like the Baptist church would have a big convention where they send certain people from the leaders of certain churches to basically make the rules for the Baptist church, like the new creed type of thing. But for the church or for Florida College, what they do is put on this lectureship where they like have the certain leaders of the church uh, put together a you know it their ideas of what the church should be almost. And then if there are changes to the church, like you look to the way that the biggest church in Florida College does like a certain thing, then it's like a standard that's been set as to whether your church could or could not do that. Now the counter argument is that like the church I go to now could care less what other churches do. Like so in that sense, no, Florida College hasn't contributed anything to my church, like how we function. But I could see how something like the lectureship is basically just a big convention for the church, non-denominational Church of Christ. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with JBM. I don't think there's anything wrong with places like Florida College. I mean, I'll probably encourage my kids to go somewhere like that. I think all of us have positive experiences that have come from that school, whether when they were there or like the friends that we've made because of it or certain other things. So, and we've talked a lot here recently with some of the books that we've read about how there's really nothing wrong with having Christian based entities, right? Be better than going to a public school where you're taught other things. So having God as something central to your institution, like Florida College, I think is a good thing, and I'm down with that. But I also agree with what you said, Piano Man. I think the lectures and certain things like that, it could be like, hey, if you want to be right and have the right idea, let's go see these certain people who have been handpicked and they are not from any other church. There's no other religious affiliation that these people are behind. They have to go to XYZ church or they can't talk. And then a lot of people basically say, go there. And that sort of becomes that centralized entity. And I think for individuals, there are certain individuals that are like, if you don't go to Florida College, you're not as good of a Christian as me. I don't know if that makes the churches of a collective, but I do think there are some elders in non-denominational churches that hold that belief. And since they hold that belief, it leaks into the system. And I do think that makes the church
Doesn't
more of a
sound very
denomination.
non-denominational to me.
Yeah. Well, so I found the other question. The other question was, is Alexander Campbell overrated in the church, or are we just another spoke in the wheel? Alexander Campbell is claimed by other churches too, not just the Church of Christ. So are we just another denomination, and has the Church of Christ become a denomination? So like, are we just
Well,
like,
that's a question, but I think the
Yeah.
better question was what JBM actually said, which is being a denomination actually wrong? And I would say actually the answer to that is yes. Well, I guess it depends on your definition of the denomination, right? So if the denomination means there's a central authority that's not Jesus, that's making the decisions for all of the churches throughout the entire United States, then I would have an issue with it because that goes against the principles laid out in the Bible itself. Because Jesus says, like, follow me. So, that's kind of the next question too. So we're not going to get into that quite yet. But
yeah,
what are
but
your
that,
thoughts, JBO?
yeah.
Is denomin?
I just really want to know what Tim Tebow thinks.
What?
Uh, Tebow's doing the what do they call it? The leadership dinner thing at FC.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Except now maybe he's going to play for Urban Meyer, so I don't know what's going on. But I don't know. I just. Are we talking about Alexander Campbell now?
Well, just that was it. Like other churches claim Alexander Campbell. So are we just like them? We're just another spoke in the wheel. We're a denomination. I think what Piano Man said was right. I think if you have a central government within your church, like a creed that is not Jesus, that's not okay. I do think, back to the first question about Florida College, some people do that.
Well,
That's
so it
what,
sounds like what you were saying earlier was Florida College has like a shadow government over the denomination known as the
well,
non-denominational Church of Christ.
I don't think the school
Is that
does
what
it
you're
on
saying?
I don't think the school does it on purpose. You're right. I think the point of the question is do they contribute to people acting that way, and thus we've become a denomination.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd stick with my first answer on that. I don't think that the school contributes to that. I mean, I think it's people. Like, it's just always individual people and people that folks would consider leaders when they make certain decisions in any body. Like, the larger something becomes and the more people that are connected to something, the more power that thing has. So, I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like overall, Florida College has certainly done a lot more good for young Christians than it's done bad. Whatever those good and bad things might be. but that would be my opinion.
So do you think being a denomination is wrong or bad?
I mean, I guess I would. I, I think it really is just all about like, are you? I guess it comes back to defining denomination, kind of like you said. But like, if you're doing the things that like the New Testament says you should do, if you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing and worshiping God, then I mean, I don't think there's a problem with it if you've got like your church and then there's a sister church or whatever that is on another side of town or something. Like, I guess it. I mean, it always just comes back to money and what you're doing with it. Really, I feel like, but
It's a good point though, because you're all supposed to be one church anyway.
right,
So it's like, yeah, it's a denomination of people following Christ, right? Like,
yeah.
that's why it's
It,
the Church
yeah.
of Christ. Like, that's what
Yeah,
they
we
always say, right?
If the centralized leadership of your denomination is Jesus Christ, then you're good. But
and
if
we
it's
have an
like
example of that
not,
in the Bible. Like the apostles literally went church to church and they wrote to different churches and said, "This is how you should act, and this is how the church should perform." Right? Like that was their job. So we have examples of people going cross churches, right? And like, like prophesying, I guess, to one another. So in that regard, I think that's right. It's not a big deal. But I think Piano Man's point about do we put something over Jesus, right? So in order to be and I don't want to like slander any churches, but like Catholic, Methodist, I guess maybe Baptist, I'm not sure. In order to be those churches, you have to have some type of creed or something that you follow in order to be that church and put that name on your building. I don't know if that's biblical, but everything else you've said, I think
the
is.
building.
No, like
Okay.
the
It's a
creed
different
behind it.
discussion,
The
right?
creed behind
different
it.
Just kidding.
That's a different topic.
Just kidding.
But you know what I'm saying.
Hmm.